Hey guys, welcome to Quinian's Edible Crafts. What is going on here? Blame the patrons, they want a spaghetti. So if we're going to make spaghetti, first things first, I do not like store-bought ground beef, it's full of junk, so I make my own. Get yourself some cheap roast that you don't mind grinding up, top round is pretty good. And go ahead and shave off all the big chunks of fat on the outside. Also, a quick safety note, if you are going to be grinding your own meat, do make sure that it's still partially frozen and that your equipment is also very cold. Once you've gotten all the big slabs of fat off of the outside, you can go ahead and cut this into some slabs. You may want to set a couple of those slabs aside, they make pretty decent steaks. This marbling that runs through the meat is totally fine, you can just go ahead and leave that there, don't worry about cutting that out. And then cut all those into more or less 1-inch chunks, whatever your food processor or meat grinder can handle. And then grind that up until you get little pebbles. You don't need to grind it too fine here, just bust it up. Now the meat is actually going to need some fat though, so I'm going to use bacon. I started with a half a pound and then realized that was not enough and ended up adding another half a pound, so 1 whole pound to about 2.5 pounds of beef. Same idea, just grind it up until it's pebbles, or if it is thawed out, then you want to grind the bacon into a paste. Go ahead and combine your beef and your bacon, and then throw that back into the food processor, or meat grinder, whichever it is you're using, just to get them mixed together really well. And now we're going to season this. As far as how much spices, it's entirely up to you, I just kind of cover the top. Do some salt, some pepper, oregano, Italian seasoning. So Italian seasoning is a mix of rosemary, thyme, oregano, a couple other things. There's absolutely no harm or shame in using a pre-mixed blend. You can do each one individually if you want, but the pre-mix makes it easy. A little bit of onion and some garlic. Of course, using fresh is always an option, but I'm assuming most people don't have fresh on hand. Add a couple of eggs to use as a binder. I do not use breadcrumbs in this because the breadcrumbs I find can make the meat kind of springy and tough, and that's not what I want. I want it really soft. Let's go ahead and mix all that in and give it a smell to see if it's smelling like Italian meat to you. In my case, I realized I totally forgot the fennel, so go ahead and put some fennel in there and get it all mixed up. And now you can roll them up. They will release fat as they're cooking, but to start with, they will need a little bit of oil in the pan. So just roll up a ton of them and throw them in your pan. Go ahead and set them on the stove on a medium heat with the lid on. And then once they're brown on one side, go ahead and flip them over. So this makes an absolute ton of meatballs, so what I like to do is do one full pan, and then once they've cooked on both sides, go ahead and put them into a baking dish, and throw that baking dish in the oven for about 20 minutes. These are the ones that we're going to freeze later. Go ahead and take the rest of the meatballs, throw them in the pan, and repeat the process, minus the baking dish. While the meatballs are going, we need to get some sauce going. So once again, if you have fresh ingredients, absolutely do use those, but I'm going to assume, given the current climate, you're digging into the apocalypse pantry a little bit there. So what we're going to do is we're going to use 4 cans of diced tomatoes that are drained, 2 cans of tomato paste, a good heaping spoon of minced garlic. So we're going to do pretty much the same spices we did before, except this time we're going to leave out the garlic powder and the fennel. And then just a little splash of some very dry sherry. Can you use cooking sherry? Yes, don't. Go ahead and blend all that up. And give it a taste to make sure it's right. If it's not, you can adjust your spices accordingly, but keep in mind that the flavor will change a little bit when it heats up, so don't get too carried away here. So now we'll just go ahead and throw that into a pot and put it on very low simmer. I mean like barely on simmer. And let that cook down for about an hour. Now you can set up a pot to boil. I put a little bit of oil and salt in there. That is for the spaghetti. Take your sauce and dump that over the meatballs and stir it up real good and put the lid on. We'll leave that simmering while we get the noodles going. Wait for your water to boil, throw in a handful of your spaghetti of choice, we like angel hair. Cook it until it is done, drain it off. I've seen a lot of people put some pasta water back in there, that's gross to me, so I just throw the noodles back into the pot with a little bit of butter, throw the lid on, wait for the butter to melt, and then we can plate it. So you put down some spaghetti, put down some sauce, it should sit perfectly on top just like this. A few meatballs, and there you go. If you thought to saute up some mushrooms and onions, you can throw those on. Normally I would cook those into the sauce, but the kids don't like them, so we put them on separate. Just a quick side note, if you don't want the sauce to be thick and sit on top like you see in menus or whatever, then avoid either draining the tomatoes or just take out the tomato paste, and that'll leave you a runny or wet sauce. One cool thing about this spaghetti is it's delicious, it's pretty cheap to make, and it will make enough to feed a small army, so the next time you're the one having to provide food for your next gaming night, maybe go with some spaghetti and meatballs. Of course, as always, thanks for watching everyone. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.